Good morning, everyone. We are so excited to have you with us today. Welcome and thank you for joining. I'm Kylie Greenkopf with Kirkwood Corporate Training. We are so excited, like I mentioned, to have you join us today for another great webinar. Today we have Helena Long joining us, and Helena is the Vice President of Leadership Development at Jet Engineering and currently leads Jet's training and consulting services function. Helena has over 30 years experience in executive management and consulting that ranged from small and middle-sized businesses up to Fortune 500 companies. Today's webinar is Recharge, boosting your emotional, mental, physical levels. As we all know, life is full of stressful moments, and we've all had to pivot a lot in this past year and really embrace change and change frequently. So with all of this in mind, we know that all these changes and stress can really be a drain on our emotional, mental, and physical batteries. So today's session is just addressing that head on with some tips and insights for navigating life's challenges. Just a quick reminder for our Zoom users, feel free to submit questions throughout today's presentation through that chat box, or you can use the Q&A if you feel more comfortable with that. We are recording today's session, and that recording will be sent out and posted on our Kirkwood Corporate Training YouTube channel, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages as well. So again, thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you, Helena, for leading us through this very important topic.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So glad that you are here. And this is such a timely topic for us, isn't it? Especially now. There was a recent Gallup poll that showed that 38% of the workforce today is feeling constant burnout. 38%. That's huge. That's actually also up from 25% before the pandemic. So that also says this is a topic, this is a situation that is worsening as we are continuing through these challenging times right now. So really appreciate your being here and exploring some of these topics. So hopefully we can get some good tips and techniques about how to better deal with this. So we're going to start by talking about these 5 topics. We're going to talk about how to recognize the signs of stress in yourself and in others. We're going to talk about how to identify and actually tame our stressful emotions as they are happening. Then we're going to move to the self-talk and talk about how we can improve our self-talk and how that links to improved our emotional state and can prevent emotional hijacking. We're going to talk about reframing and how that relates to better mental recharging. And then lastly, some tips for boosting our physical energy. And hopefully my plan is to share some tips with you that are a little different or take to the next level those ideas of eat well and exercise and sleep well. So let's start with signs of stress. So what is stress? Stress actually occurs when we feel the demands on our time and energy exceed our capacity to handle that. Now, it's tolerable stress when we can adapt, when I can increase my capacity or when I can decrease the demands. But if we can't do that, then often we move into survival mode. And that's where we just don't have the resources we need. So those stress hormones start pumping out in our bodies. And that's when we start to feel this burnout and this stress. So some of the indicators of stress are shown here. Changes in our bodies, changes in our behaviors, changes in our feelings, and changes in our thoughts. Okay, so I won't read those lists to you, but I want you to think about, as you look at those items, could you check any of those boxes? Do any of those fit for you right now or for someone that you work with or even someone that you interact with, but say a coworker or someone that you lead? Kylie, I believe we have a poll. Could we ask you to launch the poll for us, please? What I'd like to do, if we can get that launched, is ask you to actually just go through and check the ones that apply to you. It is anonymous. So no one will see which ones you check. But if you could check the ones that apply to you, also if any of these apply to people you work with, maybe even family members, but people that you deal with, you interact with. Great, thank you. So far we have a leader. Oh, but they're catching up. Yeah, a lot. We're feeling a lot of these, aren't we, guys? Yeah. All right. I think we've got enough of the group to get a good sense of the trend, and let's share the results here. So our winner is changes in our feelings, the feeling worried, confused, feeling angry, feeling overwhelmed, and feeling like we just can't cope. And don't those kinds of feelings really also trigger some then of the physical signs, maybe even some of the behaviors? They're fairly interdependent, aren't they? But just even judging from this, we can see that we are all experiencing a lot of these things, or working with or living with other people in our lives that are also experiencing these things. All right. So hopefully the tips that we talk about we can apply, but also we can share them and with others and coach others like our fellow team members in some of the things we'll be talking about today. Let's start with our emotional recharging. Feelings are powerful, aren't they? Feelings are really powerful. So the key here is if we want to recharge, get this boost emotionally, how do we get our feelings under control? Better manage our feelings. So that starts with self-awareness. Self-awareness refers to being able to be aware and recognize our feelings in the moment as they are happening, and then being able to control them so that I can be strategic, deliberate about how I want to behave. I don't have to just react how I'm hardwired to react to my emotions. I can be more thoughtful about that. That's self-awareness. So I have a question for you, and I'd like to ask you to just type it in the chat. But what ticks you off? What is something that when it happens, or when you see it, when you hear it, you just want to explode? And can you just type it in the chat? I can share one for me. It's when I hear someone say, "That's not my job." That just burns me up. That just can send me off the deep end. And so what is something that if you see it, if you hear it, it just pushes a button? Lack of planning, thank you. Being lied to, absolutely. People can't make decisions. Bullying, having to repeat yourself. My teenager complaining about people, co-workers complaining about people, right? Yeah, don't care. Good ones. Ungrateful people, absolutely. Being told, "I didn't know that," when you've been told 100 times. Yes. Other coworkers not being willing to help and acting like that they're stressed even when they're not contributing. Yeah, racist, big time. When a person doesn't acknowledge, say relax. Don't you hate it when someone says, "Calm down"? When people ask overwhelmed because people are overwhelmed because they won't ask for help. Yeah, let us know. Just general complaining, incompetence. Oh, these are good ones, guys. Okay, are you feeling your blood pressure just go up thinking about this? Yes. So we all have these buttons that when we hear it, when we see it, it just sets us off. So how does this relate to self-awareness? If I can be aware of what those things are, then I can be more sensitive to those. So instead of reacting, I'm better able to contain my emotions and to control that. So, what are some techniques to improve our self-awareness? First is mindfulness. Mindfulness means being totally present in the moment. When I can be right here with you, focused on you, thinking about you, rather than being concerned about my next meeting or what's going to happen this afternoon, but I'm right here, then it's much easier for me to be focused on how I'm feeling and what's happening with me right now. Know who or what pushes our buttons. We just demonstrated that. Consider our values. This is a big one. I know what kind of a person I want to be, what kind of a leader I want to be, what kind of a coworker I want to be. So after I have these feelings, if I can be aware in the moment and be thoughtful and be deliberate about how I handle them, I want to do so in alignment with my values, in alignment with who I want to be and how I want to be seen. And then a real hot tip is name it to tame it. So if we can be aware in the moment of how we're feeling and just pause and label what's happening, label how we're feeling, research shows that that immediately will help us to get control of that feeling and that emotion. All right. So this takes us to the topic of emotional hijacking. And so we'll start with what we see or hear, this thing that can tick us off. And we go straight to here to the next box of telling ourselves a story about what this means. And you notice in parentheses, often we're making this up. This is that self-talk. And because of the story we tell ourselves, now we have feelings about it. And then based on those feelings, we act, or we react, maybe is a better way to say it. Let me give you an example. If I take my situation of where when I hear someone say, that's not my job, I immediately start telling myself, that person's lazy, that person doesn't care about the team, that person is not committed, this person's not engaged. So how do I feel? I feel angry. I feel betrayed. I might even feel overwhelmed because maybe I needed that person's help to get my job done. So how do I act? I may lash out. I get angry. I may say things I shouldn't. I could even get, really frustrated, go withdraw. Maybe I want to ostracize that person from the team. All of those are pretty dysfunctional reactions, right? Where, let's play this back. If I had started way back here at the beginning, and when I heard the person say, that's not my job, if I had stopped right there to have a conversation, what I might have learned is that person is very willing to help me with what I need because they're willing to stay late and work overtime tonight to finish their job. Or that person might have said, that's not my job, but I'll get Kylie to help me with my job. And so then I can help you with yours. Okay, so instead of even giving that an opportunity to happen, I was already on this track, all right, going with what I thought, what I felt, and perhaps acted inappropriately. Okay, can you relate to this? Can you think about how this has happened to you or how you have seen it happen to other people? I have a short video clip I want to show you, and bear with me, I've got to change a setting in Zoom so you can hear the video. All right, but I have a short video clip, and this is a great example of emotional hijacking.
Hey, everyone's eating tacos outside Bill's office. Don't you think that's some information I would like to know? I like tacos. You invited Eric? I thought Eric gave you the creeps. Oh. Yeah. Hey.
Don't be left behind. Get it first with AT&T, the nation's fastest mobile broadband network, period. Rethink possible.
All right, can you relate to that? When things like that have happened, and that is an example of emotional hijacking. He saw people gathering, he was telling himself a story that they didn't invite him, and he reacted. once he got the facts, he had been invited. All right. So we want to avoid emotional hijacking. So what are some tips to avoid emotional hijacking? Pause. Stop. Take a beat. Take a breath. Just start thinking about how you're feeling. Again, this is where the name entertainment can come in real handy. Then seek to understand. Try to look, put yourself in the other person's shoes. Ask questions and listen non-judgmentally. Listen with an open mind to really understand their perspective. And then confirm and clarify. Did I really hear what you were saying? Do I understand? Another strategy is to just delay the conversation. Don't react right then. Take a break. Let some time pass before you have the conversation. Okay. So those are some tips to help us with our emotions, getting control of them and handling them better so that we don't get so burned out. We don't become a slave to our feelings. Some other techniques, one is to just sleep on it. Again, it's sort of like a pause, but it's a longer pause. So sleep on it. When I worked at Kinsey, the CEO there, this was a key strategy he used. I would take things into Brian and say, I'm bringing you something you're going to want to sleep on tonight. And take control of your self-talk. Speak to someone who is not emotionally invested in your problem, and someone who will be objective, but make sure you go to someone who won't also just tell you what you want to hear. Build a mental recharge into your schedule, whether that is just taking a walk, getting outside. Okay? So doing these kinds of things can help. Okay, let's move on to mental recharging. So now how are we going to get control of how we're feeling mentally, what's going on in our head? And what we want to focus on in the few minutes we have here is reframing. I've given you a couple of quotes here from Gandhi and Zig Ziglar, both really talking about how important our thoughts are. We said feelings are powerful. Our thoughts are powerful, aren't they? So we're going to talk about reframing. And I want you to think about this like we have a pair of sunglasses on and things look a certain way. When we take off our sunglasses, things can look very different. And that's what we want to do with reframing. Is there a different way to look at what's going on? So let me give you some tips on how to do this. First, I want to say, write down your thought. Write down these disturbing thoughts. And the value in writing it down is if I really write it down, it has to be solid. I have to be clear and firm about what I'm thinking. Then go to the next step of let's check our facts. This is what I'm thinking, but is this true? Let me give you an example. One thought we could have is if I have to go to the grocery store, or I need to, but if I go to the grocery store, I'm going to get COVID. So then let's check the facts. Are we really going to get COVID? What's the likelihood, the percentage of likelihood that we'll get COVID if we go to the grocery store? So check your facts. Then go to, is this helpful? Maybe it is true or partially true. Then how can we use that information? So we may realize if we go to the store, and we have to go to the store, maybe, that there is a chance we could get COVID. But now, how can I use that information? I can find out what all the store is doing to keep me safe as a customer. I can also look at what I can do to reduce the risk. I can wear my mask. I could even wear gloves if I was concerned. Okay. The next strategy is think about what you would tell a friend. We are often so much kinder to the conversations we have with our friends, with our loved ones, than we are with our self-talk. So think about what you would say to talk a friend down from their anxiety, and use those same messages with yourself. This middle diagram here, where are you? I think often we think of reframing as, let's take a negative thought and spin it to a positive thought. I want to suggest that, and I'm not saying just put on rose-colored glasses here, but I'm saying let's be realistic. It's not always doom and gloom, but let's get to what really is actually happening and what we can actually do about it. And then lastly, a great trick or tip and trick is to turn a thought into action. That will make you feel better. The picture I used here is of jewelry making because that's a hobby that I use to help me feel better. But what is a hobby or an action you can take that will mentally recharge you as you do it? So some tips and techniques for the mental recharging. All right, our third category here is the physical well-being, physical recharging. We've all heard that eat well, get enough sleep, exercise. I want to build on that and give you a few additional tips here. So this first picture on the top left indicates meditation. Research is showing us that if we can give our brain a quiet break for even 15 to 30 minutes, that can boost our physical energy. So we often think of meditation as being much longer. But again, if we can put ourselves in a quiet bubble for even 15 minutes, that's going to make a big difference in terms of our physical energy. The middle picture is get outside. Research shows if we can get outside, walk around, again, we just immediately will start feeling better physically. In fact, if we can break a sweat while we're outside, that's even better. Now, I know we've had some really cold weather here in Iowa, and we maybe haven't been able to get out and do that. So also there can be some benefits in just getting pictures of the outdoors that we find enjoyable. Kylie and I were talking about Hawaii. We could get pictures of Hawaii and being outdoors in Hawaii, and that could help us feel recharged here. The third picture, top right there, talks about snack well. You know, it's 3 o'clock, we're getting those mid-afternoon slumps and we grab a snack. This says, let's just be mindful about the snacks that we're grabbing and make sure we grab snacks that will fuel us, not just fill us up. One technique here is to make sure that all of the ingredients that you are eating are ones that your grandmother would recognize, right? This 10:30 in the middle, the clock, signifies going to bed at 10:30 at night. We've heard get enough sleep. Research has shown that as adults, we need at least 7 hours of sleep a night. If we can get that amount of sleep, that goes a long way to prepare us physically for whatever challenges we might be addressing the next day. On the left there, we see a lot of eyes. That signifies blinking. Research would tell us that most of us blink about 18 times a minute, except when we're looking at our computer screen. And then we only blink half as much, which causes eye fatigue. So the recommendation is the 20 by 20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds, and that will help with the eye fatigue. We have a glass of water here. That signifies paying attention to your thirst. If we are even a little bit dehydrated, that can cause fatigue. The little active guy here, listening to music, signifies listening to music. We can get a lot of energy putting on our playlist that we find energizing. I know we were working with one company, and every afternoon, this one department have a dance party. So taking some time to play music and get energized there. This last picture on the right is a coffee cup, talking about coffee. And the hot tip is to have a cup of coffee at 10:30 a.m. And the reason for that is that we get our morning energy boost about 8 to 9 a.m. And so if we have our coffee during that energy boost, that's not going to help us very much. But if we're coming down off that energy boost and then we have our cup of coffee, then we get that jolt from the caffeine, and it can help give us that mental, physical recharging that we might want. All right. So hopefully, real quickly, we've gone through some tips and techniques that you could use to help emotionally, mentally, and physically. And there's so much more that we could go into deeper with any of these. If this is something you want to know more about, certainly let us know, and more activities that we can do, and so on, and even focus on how you could better work with your teams. But we wanted to make sure in this 30-minute time frame that we gave you some good hands-on tips and techniques that you can use. So thank you for your time and your attention, and I hope it was really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Helena. That was phenomenal. I love the 20 by 20 rule. I know I can be guilty of the eye fatigue problem. So just something simple and easy like that, improving my day is great. And I also love the tip that I can have an excuse for another cup of coffee in my morning. I want to thank you all for joining us again today. If you would like to bring Helena or any of our trainers in-house or on this topic or any topic, feel free to give us a call at Kirkwood Corporate Training. Our number is 319-398-5623. Or you can send us an email at corporatetraining@kirkwood.edu. Helena has a slide up right now that I would like to draw everyone's attention to, which is we have another webinar on March 10th. It is at 9 a.m. and it's on creating a culture of no excuses with Pamela Mum. If you'd like more information on that, you can check out our Facebook or LinkedIn pages where you can find the registration information for those. For our Facebook Live viewers, I want to thank you again for joining us. I'm actually going to be ending that live stream here shortly. As a quick reminder, if you are registered to attend via Zoom, you can actually stay on and participate in the Q&A with our trainers. So for those of you on Zoom, please go ahead and be typing any questions you have, and we will tackle those shortly. Great. All right, so it looks like some of you guys are chatting, submitting some questions. Sorry, I just got to switch screens here. Thank everybody for your amazing feedback. It's always great when we can see that you are feeling more relaxed already. That's phenomenal. But also just hearing your gratitude on today's topic. Does anyone have any questions about some of these practices, or maybe any challenges you've personally been experiencing during this difficult time with all of our changes and having to pivot? I know for me, pivot has become one of those words that I always embraced. In this last year, I've gotten tired of hearing that word. Helena, what's one of the things that you see as one of the biggest challenge for people when they're maybe struggling with recharging? Do you ever see any issues with maybe finding that grace to let yourself step back and recharge?
Oh, absolutely. I think especially, I know some of the companies that we're working with, Kylie, although we're in the middle of a pandemic, their workload has increased phenomenally, depending on what the industry is. So there is just so much stress, people working long hours, and then still having people that are in quarantine or homeschooling, or you have people that can't be at work. So that means even more work for those that are there, and stress for those who aren't there, knowing that their coworkers are picking up the slack. And so I think especially when people are in that mode of just having all of this work to do and feeling overwhelmed with the pressure to meet deadlines and meet production schedules, it's really hard to think about stepping back and taking a break. And yet we're seeing all of the burnout. We're seeing this really occur with creating a lot more conflict, just stress on interactions, stress on relationships, stress health-wise with people. A lot more injuries are occurring in factories where people now are feeling stressed and tired and burned out. And so although it's taking a short break, I'll go to find that 15-minute quiet bubble, or take a walk outside. It may feel like you're leaving the job, but when you get back, you'll be so much more effective when you can do that. But it is hard to take that break when you're in that mode. You're on that treadmill, you know? Yeah.
I love that idea of you have to reframe it as, yes, you're stepping away, but you will come back more effective, more productive, and able to actually give more. So it's definitely worth that break.
Yeah, absolutely. I see one question here, and it's, how do we prepare a team for the constant change that may be taking place daily, weekly? The team often talks about being busy and not having enough time. What's the first thing to implement? I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm going to say, as I assume you're a leader of this group, and it is the listening, and being empathetic. And sometimes we can't always fix what people are telling us, but to listen and put ourselves in their shoes, make that bridge of understanding with them is going to be important. And for them to know that we are in there, we're with them. We're in this hole with them, trying to figure this out. Also, if you think about, I also go to just how you lead change. And I think the first is involve them in the change as much as you can. There are some changes that are imposed. And for those, we just have to go to our teammates and say, this is what's happening. And when that's the case, again, I think explaining all of the why and helping them understand how it will impact them, and getting their input, trying to support them as much as you can with that, and just helping them with strategies on how they embrace that change. If it is change that where they do have some input, where you are able to involve them in the planning and strategizing, that is even better, because then they don't feel as much like something is being done to them, as much as they are able to be a part of this, and it helps to better embrace it. They can then better own this, feel accountability, feel a part of it, feel committed to making this change work. A lot of words, but I think empathy and involvement. Yes, good. I hope that was helpful.
I love that idea that you just shared with that. Involve them so that way they're part of it and it's not just something that happened to them. Yeah. So I think that's really important, especially with as much change and as quick as things have had to change.
Yeah,
repeatedly.
Yes, and just transparency as a leader. This is we have to have trust. Pat Lentoni, in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team, talks about how critical trust is in building a team. I think for any leader to be effective, they've got to have the trust of their team, and they've got to trust their team. And so, especially in the times that we're in right now, being transparent, sharing all of the information that you can. Sometimes you can't share it all, but share everything that you can. I think if you're asked a question and you honestly can't share information, say, I can't share that right now, but I will when I can. But transparency is important. Involvement is important. Real frequent communications, real frequent check-ins with your team members, showing that you care. And I also want to say, and getting to know them about their private lives. Years ago, the whole focus was on, you leave your personal life at home. And now we're seeing we don't do that. We're humans. We're a total being. Our personal lives do come to work with us. And as a leader, I want to understand what you're dealing with on a personal level, because then when I see performance issues at work, for example, I can better understand the total context to really determine how best to support you with that. So a lot of it is that relationship building with your team members.
That is a great point. I love that idea of we're not just employees sitting at a desk or doing a function. We're a total being, and we are complicated, and sometimes that's messy, and sometimes it affects how we show up. So these are great tips on how we can all start to show up a little bit better, recognize when we're not showing up with our A game, and what we can do to turn it around. So all great tips. Thank you so much today, Helena, for that. Again, if you guys have any other questions, or if you get back to your desk and you think, shoot, I wish I had asked this, feel free to reach out to me at Corporate Training, and I can definitely ask Helena and just get your insights on any situation you're having, or if you'd like to have Helena come in and do a deeper dive, maybe you have a more nuanced situation and you would just like some assistance in how to help your employees during such a difficult time, again, feel free to reach out to Kirkwood Corporate Training, and we would love to help you navigate that and support your employees on whatever is next and helping them navigate any challenges they may be experiencing. So with that being said, I want to thank you all again for your time today. It's always great being able to do these webinars with you all. And Helena, thank you again.
I appreciate you being here and all of your participation today. Thank you.
Yes, very good. And just a quick reminder, I will be sending out the recording. It did look like maybe the recording didn't capture your poll, so I did grab a quick screen grab of that, and I will see if I can get that edited into today's webinar so you guys can see how that voting shook out. Again, it's all anonymous, so all you see is that kind of where the bulk of people were voting. So again, thank you all for joining us. And Helena, thank you for your time. I hope everyone has a fantastic day and you guys can get outside and enjoy our slightly warmer weather.
Great. Thank you all.